Good day everyone, I am Chaves as this Kotcho from Discipline 32 and today I will be discussing a case that has become a significant part of the Philippine constitutional law and media law. The case is Chaves vs. Gonzales, decided by the Supreme Court on February 15, 2008. This case is widely discussed in law school because it deals with a delicate balance between government authority and the freedom of the press. It is also highly relevant today as issues surrounding media freedom, government regulation, and access to information continue to shape our society. Before I go into the five main parts of my video, let me briefly explain why this case matters. We live in a world where information is powerful. Media plays a major role in shaping opinions, holding leaders accountable, and giving citizens the information they need to make informed decisions. When the government issues warnings or threats about what can or cannot be aired, the line between regulation and censorship can become blurry. That is exactly what happened in this case. It serves as a reminder that even democratic governments can sometimes overstep their limits, and the Constitution exists to prevent that. With that context in mind, let me now proceed to the 5 important points that I will explain today. The first one is what is the case all about? The second one is what are the facts of this case? And what are the issues of this case? What are the rulings of the Supreme Court? And lastly, what are my personal insights or key takeaways and learnings in this case? For the first one, what is the case all about? The case Chaves vs. Gonzales revolves around a crucial constitutional question. Can the government stop the media from airing a controversial recording simply through public warnings? This began with the Hello Garci tape, a widely talked about wiretap conversation allegedly between President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and COMELEC Commissioner Virgilio Garciliano. When the tape became public, many people believed it pointed to election cheating. Instead of welcoming transparency, the Department of Justice and the National Telecommunications Commissions issued warnings to media networks, saying that broadcasting the tape could violate the Anti-Wiretapping Law, and that these warnings were not simple reminders. They came from powerful agencies that had the authority to revoke licenses and impose penalties. Because of these warnings, media organizations felt threatened and pressured to stop recording on the issue. This situation deeply concerned Francisco Chaves, who believed that the government's action amounted to unconstitutional prior restraint, which means censorship before the speech even happens. So, he brought the matter to the Supreme Court, arguing that the warnings violated the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, the press, and the public's right to be informed. At its core, the case asked, does the government have the legal right to limit media coverage without a strong and legitimate reason? Or was the government simply suppressing information that was politically inconvenient? For the second one, what are the facts of this case? Let me walk you through the sequence of events that led to this case. In 2005, the so-called Hello Garci recording reached the public. It contained a conversation where President Arroyo allegedly asked Garciliano about manipulating election results. Naturally, this created public outrage and widespread calls for transparency. Journalists and media networks started discussing the tape to inform the public. However, the government responded by issuing warnings. The DOJ secretary publicly stated that anyone broadcasting or even possessing the tape could face criminal liability under the Anti-Wiretapping Law. The NTC followed by telling broadcast networks that airing the tape could result in penalties, including suspension or cancellation of their franchise and broadcast license. These warnings created a chilling effect, a situation where people are afraid to exercise their rights due to fear of punishments. Media outlets, not wanting to risk sanctions, became hesitant to report on the issue. Some even stopped airing discussions related to the recording. Seeing this, Francisco Chaves filed a petition before the Supreme Court. He argued that these warnings were unconstitutional, that they intimidated the media, and that they suppressed information that was clearly of a public concern. For the third one, what are the issues raised in this case? This case raised two major constitutional issues. The first one is the case whether or not the DOJ and NTC warnings, even though they were not written orders, amounted to unconstitutional prior restraint. Prior restraint is considered the most serious form of censorship because it prevents speech before it can reach the public. The question here was, can public warnings alone, without any formal directive, already violate press freedom? For the second one, the court had to determine whether or not the government could use the Anti-Wiretapping Law as a justification for stopping the airing of the tape, despite not being able to show that broadcasting it would cause a clear, immediate, and serious danger to public order. For a restriction to be valid, there must be a clear and present danger, meaning the harm must be so serious and so imminent that restricting speech becomes necessary. The Supreme Court needed to decide if the government's reasoning was legitimate, or if it was simply trying to prevent the spread of politically damaging information. For the fourth one, I'll be discussing the rulings of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Francisco Chaves. The central question was whether or not the government could warn or pressure the media from airing the Hello Garci tapes on the basis of the Anti-Wiretapping Law. And the Supreme Court clearly said, no, they cannot. The court held that the warnings of the DOJ and the NTC constitution unconstitutional prior restraint, since the warnings were targeting a specific piece of content, which is the Hello Garci tape. The court applied the clear and present danger test. To justify censorships, the government needed to show that airing the tape would result in a very serious and immediate harm, but they failed to do so. The government could not point to any real danger to national security, public safety, or even public order. The Supreme Court also emphasized that it does not matter whether the warnings were formal written orders or just spoken statements. What matters is the effect. These agencies can revoke licenses or impose sanctions, so even verbal threats can silence journalists. Thus, the Supreme Court concluded that the warnings violated the three important rights: the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, and the people's right to the information. The ruling reinforced the idea that government must not interfere with the free flow of information unless there is a truly compelling and proven reason. For the last one, what are my takeaways and learnings from the case? From this case, I gained several important lessons about democracy, the Constitution, and the role of the press. First, I realized that the press freedom is essential. Even subtle government pressure can have a strong silencing effect. When journalists are afraid, the public becomes uninformed. A democracy cannot function when information is controlled or restricted. For the second one, I learned that democracy depends on transparency and accountability. The Hello Garci controversy involved public officials and potential election fraud, matters that every citizen has the right to know about. If the government can easily suppress such information, then democratic checks and balances collapse. For the third one, this case reminded me that laws must be applied carefully. The government cannot use a law like the Anti-Wiretapping Law as a blanket excuse to stop the spread of information, especially when the issue involves public interest. Restrictions must always meet strict constitutional standards. For the fourth one, I gained a deeper respect for the role of the Supreme Court. When other branches of government attempt to overreach or abuse their power, the court stands as a guardian of constitutional rights. Its decision in this case protected not just the media but also the public's right to know the truth. Lastly, this case taught me that freedom is fragile. It must be defended constantly, especially in times of controversy. As a student and as a future professional, we must be aware of our rights and be ready to speak up when those rights are being threatened. In conclusion, Chaves versus Gonzales is a powerful reminder that freedom of expression and press freedom are cornerstones of our democratic society. The government should not intimidate or silence the media without strong and legitimate reason supported by clear evidence. This case teaches us to value transparency, accountability, and the continued protection of constitutional rights. Thank you very much, and that concludes this video. Bye!